All right, welcome everybody. My name is Victoria Bray. I'm the Associate Director of Recruitment with the Brown University Division of Masters and Professional Programs, and we are here to share some more information with you about the Master of Science in Sustainable Energy program at Brown University. I've got Rod Beresford with me here to talk about the program, working in the School of Engineering. So we're going to go ahead and get started if we want to go to the next slide. We got a lot of things to cover in a short period of time. So we're going to talk about the School of Engineering. We'll talk about the application process, program, structure, curriculum. And then of course, we'll talk about Brown's specific resources for master's students. We're going to use the Q&A function on your Zoom toolbar to start to collect questions. We'll answer questions throughout the session, but then we'll also leave time at the end for a more formal Q&A if anything comes up. That being said, we'll also share email addresses so folks can follow up after the session. If you attend this session, which of course, if you're listening to me, you are attending this session, you'll also get an application fee waiver for your sustainable energy application. That's an automatic process. There's nothing that you need to do. There's no coupon code or anything like that. We will just follow up with an email and then you won't be prompted to submit payment on your application. So that being said, let's go to the next slide. And I'll pass it over to Rod to talk about School of Engineering.
Thanks, Victoria. I'm Rod Beresford, and I'm professor in the School of Engineering. I've been at Brown for quite a while. The program we're talking about today is, in fact, our newest master's program. What we're showing on this slide are some illustrations of the Brown School of Engineering facilities, just to give you a sense of what you'll be encountering if you come to Brown. On the left is a view of the makerspace in one of our large lab buildings. This building, in fact, is about to undergo some renovations, improvements to this space. In 2017, we completed a major construction project, the Engineering Research Center, which is pictured on the right, housing state-of-the-art lab facilities, a large common area you see there where students gather and study and events take place. I want to just briefly say the school is a small school of engineering compared to some of our peers, like our other Ivy League cousins. We have highly accomplished faculty, top scientists in their fields, and at Brown in particular, a strong focus on undergrad education and on interdisciplinary programs in particular. This one, the Sustainable Energy Master's degree, new master's degree, is a great example of that. Let's go ahead to the next slides.
Awesome. So I'll talk a little bit more about the admission requirements and the application process. So a couple of things to keep in mind about the program and items that you'll need to submit for your application. One, we need your transcripts from all post-secondary education. So if you have multiple degrees, you've attended multiple institutions, we'll need all of those transcripts so that we can get the full picture of your academic history after high school. Your transcripts can be unofficial for the purposes of reviewing your application. However, if you do end up matriculating at Brown, we're going to require you to follow up with official transcripts at some point. If you attended an institution outside of the United States for your undergraduate degree, we might also require you to submit a credential evaluation upon matriculation. Again, for your application, all we need from you are your unofficial transcripts from all post-secondary education institutions. We're going to require you to submit 3 letters of recommendation on your behalf. So those can come from professional or academic sources, up to you, but we do need all 3 letters of recommendation in order for your application to be considered complete. Personal statement, which is going to outline your experience academically as well as professionally, your goals as they pertain to the program, as well as your interest in Brown University and the Sustainable Energy Master's program. Your resume will outline that work experience, that academic experience, highlight any accomplishments that you have, really sort of add that round texture to your application so that we can get a sense of your skills. And then your GRE scores aren't going to be required. So the School of Engineering, we don't require GRE scores, but we're going to encourage you to submit them if you have taken the test to sort of help bolster that application. You can see the deadlines on the screen in front of you as well. For sustainable energy, we have both a spring and a fall intake. So right now we're reviewing applications for spring 2026, but we're also accepting applications for fall 2026. You can see the deadlines for spring in front of you. One of the deadlines is passed, the international application deadline. We might have some divergent deadlines for students who require visa sponsorship. That's really only so that we can support you in that visa process, make sure that we're giving you ample time to do everything that you need to to do to go through the visa process. You have 2 weeks after the deadline to make sure that your application is complete. Make sure that you're submitting your application by the deadline, even if there are some items that might be pending, like letters of recommendation or test scores. We won't be able to release an admission decision until all those materials have been received that are required, but you have until 2 weeks after the deadline to finalize that application. So we can go to the next slide. Here are the application deadlines in another format, really for fall and for spring. So the fall start deadline for international students is April 1st, and the final deadline is April 1st as well. For fall, we have a little bit more time, so we don't need to have those two deadlines, but it's important to note that our priority deadline for fall is going to be February 1st, 2026. Applying priority is great because you get a decision from us earlier. You also get to access Brown resources earlier as an enrolled student if you end up enrolling. So things like housing wait lists, a Brown email address, all of that will come after you enroll. And if you apply and are admitted by the priority deadline, then you'll have that earlier than you would if you applied by April. So we can go to the next slide. And I'll talk a little bit more about personal statement, letters of recommendation. These are two items that you're going to provide to us that really add a lot of context to your application. Your personal statement is the only opportunity we have really a lot of time to read an original piece of writing from you so that we can see what your writing skills look like, how you communicate in an academic setting. It's an opportunity for you to express yourself as well, help us understand why you're interested in a sustainable energy master's degree, what you plan on doing with it, and how you feel like Brown can help further your academic as well as your professional goals. Make sure that you're following the instructions around the personal statement and really throughout the application. If we're giving you word limits, make sure you're following those word limits. Make sure that you're proofreading. That's a really highly polished document for our faculty to review. The audience for your application is really Brown University faculty. They're your admission committee. They're reviewing your application. So keep that in mind. As far as letters of recommendation, really think about who is going to speak to you highly, who knows you well. So typically, especially for recent graduates, we're going to want to see 2 letters of recommendation from academia and 1 professional letter of recommendation for folks who are a little further out of college. That might look a little bit different, but of course, we're happy to answer any questions that you might have. And the most important piece of this too is I get a lot of questions. I have 2 stellar letters of recommendation. Can I just submit those 2 letters of recommendation and not a third? We need all 3 letters of recommendation to be able to consider your application. As you're asking for letters of recommendation, make sure that you're asking folks who can say more about you than just this person got in the top 10% of grades in my class, or this person was always sort of present for class. Really choose folks who can speak to you, who can speak to your success in a potential master's degree, and who can talk about your specific academic and career goals. So if we want to go to the next slide, important program dates to keep in mind. So for spring 2026 entry, it's really important to talk about that first day of classes. So classes generally start mid to late January. And then you can see we go through the semester taking classes until May, and then commencement, which for your first year obviously wouldn't be for you, happens at the end of May. And then if we want to go to the next slide, then we'll talk about for fall 2026, that first day of classes is September 9th. And then you'll see as you move through the program, some other key dates to keep track of. So we can go to the next slide, and I'll hand things over to Rod to talk more in depth about the program.
All right, thanks, Victoria. As I mentioned, I'm professor at Brown. I have served as a researcher, an instructor in many different courses in electrical engineering is my primary field of expertise. I've also been an administrator at Brown in several capacities. And about 5 years ago, I took a leave and served as a congressional fellow, which is a program that brings science and technology experts into the U.S. government, either the Senate, House of Representatives, or the executive branch, to give advice and perspective on policies. So the program we're talking about today, as I mentioned, is the newest master's program in the School of Engineering, represents a focused work area of about 25 faculty, not just in engineering, but other physical sciences, including physics, chemistry, and earth and planetary sciences primarily. This slide is something you may have seen, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. To the left on this graph is the historical record of average surface temperature, and the rise that you're seeing up to the present day represents the effects of all the carbon emissions and other greenhouse gas emissions essentially since the pre-industrial era. And to the right, if you will, is the time period that you all, as young people entering your careers and working in this field, will be responsible for, this trajectory. And what's pictured here is actually rather hopeful that this consistent upward trend is going to bend over, and this is due to a tremendous transition, a huge amount of change happening in the economy globally. Here in the U.S., the decarbonization of our major sectors. So this is just placing in context why we've come out with this program at this time. The time period that we're talking about is literally the extent of your careers and beyond. This is not a problem that's going to be solved in the next year or two. And there's a lot of opportunity happens to be opening right at this time. Let's go to the next slide and look a little more at what Brown can offer and what the structure of this program is going to be, the curriculum that you would take if you come. I'm going to be talking for about the next 20 minutes or so, but there will definitely be time for you to ask some questions at the end. And let me also say, I'm very happy to hear from you one-on-one subsequently. My email is being shared, and if you want to reach out, I'm happy to schedule a time to talk further about your particular interests. So Brown has, as I mentioned, a lot of top scientists in the School of Engineering, but we are also here in this initiative representing the other physical sciences and, importantly, other units on campus in the effort to bring together not just technology solutions, but also the understanding of impacts in society and the policies that are going to aid in this decarbonization transition. So what you're looking at on this slide are some of the other major units at Brown that we collaborate with, and where you would be interacting with other students and faculty, and potentially taking courses as well, depending on your own interests. That's one of the hallmarks at Brown. We expect students to be active participants in planning their education and those decisions about what needs to be in their program given their interests and their goals. So let's go to the next slide, please. The next few slides, I'm going to talk some about what has happened in the recent past in the policy landscape and the political situation, and where we expect things to be going in the near future. Of course, forecasting is never a sure thing, and when nobody knows what's coming next, but we can talk about where we've been recently. This slide is emphasizing that since the Biden administration began in 2021, there's been an enormous amount of investment directed at this transition. That is the energy system transition to a low carbon and ultimately zero or net zero carbon system. And I've just listed some of those major pieces of legislation. The one that is the second bullet on this list, I happened to work on it during that sabbatical year I mentioned when I served in the US Senate on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. So if we can go to the next slide, a little more detail on the Inflation Reduction Act, which was really an clean energy transition act, if you will. Most of the provisions of that were about this very topic of converting the U.S. economy, U.S. industry to low carbon energy sources. And the funding that has flowed from that is like a catalyst. It provides a way for project developers to remove risk from their projects. There's the federal subsidy in effect, whether it's through tax credits, incentives, or other measures, and it allows these major projects to be more attractive to investors and to move forward in a way they wouldn't before. So you can see some of the figures, some of the estimates from the first years of IRA. Now, you may be a little worried about the current political environment and how things are changing, which, of course, there's always that possibility. Right now, there's a number of efforts to take back some of those funds and to rescind some of those measures. I hear from people, business and consulting regularly, and I think sort of the general sense of it right now is, yes, things have slowed down relative to to what they were just a year ago, but not stopped. I mean, most of these trends are being driven by fundamentals, business fundamentals. Those haven't changed. You know, what is the most economical energy supply you can build today? And you know, those, despite the political headwinds or what you might see as blowback, there is still a massive and growing demand for these skills that we're addressing with this program. You can see that at the bottom. So let's go to the next slide. I'm just going to give you a little bit more of a taste of what's been happening recently. Some of this you may know, depending on what you've been studying or where you're located. This graph is showing you literally one day of the electricity system in the state of California. That was on April 16th last year. And there is something notable about this, kind of a first, if you will, which is that at a certain time there, you can see towards the end of the day, the largest single contributor to power on the grid in California was battery storage. And so the big yellow blob in the middle, that represents solar, which is, of course, a plentiful resource in California. There's a very big peak of available power in the middle of the day. And what's happening now is that batteries are being deployed in order to capture some of that excess solar energy during midday and shift that, discharge the batteries later in the day or earlier in the day when there are peaks of demand not coinciding with the sunlight. So that's a major trend. State of California has deployed something like 6 gigawatts of battery storage. There's also a lot has been built in Texas. Other states are coming along. So this is one of the big stories today. And as a professional in this kind of space, there's a lot for you to understand about how the technology of these battery systems collides with and is then incorporated into existing market structures. And what's the difference between a 4-hour battery and a 12-hour battery on the grid? Might be one and the same underlying technology, but because of how those markets are structured, you would need to hit a certain cost point to be able to function as a 12-hour battery. And what does that mean? So things like that will be very much topics in the curriculum. Let's go to the next slide for a little more detail on this. On the left, I'm showing some recent projections of growth in electricity demand. That demand has been rather flat for a long time. Not completely, but substantially. And what people are seeing now is essentially three things, two primarily, and one right now you've probably been reading about, growth of data centers for AI and for crypto and for cloud services. There's a huge demand mounting for that. And the growth of electrification, which is the basic means by which we're gonna undertake this transition, is another demand driver. It hasn't been a huge piece so far, but it is growing, and it's going to be a big part of it. So again, you may not feel super confident of the pace of that. People are questioning whether this AI boom is going to either plateau or burst like previous bubbles have. These are all fair questions. So that black line to the left, of course, is just one major technology provider's view of what may be happening. But I think most people agree that what's coming is a very significant increase in the demand for electricity in this country, and so a lot's going to get built. That's a lot of opportunity. And currently, of course, the lowest cost generation is renewables. So there's a huge opportunity to actually implement this transition we're talking about. The right-hand side on this graph just shows the last 10 years change in the availability of electrical vehicle charging ports. And again, just a glance at that shows you there's been major build out, and that's going to continue. So that and other aspects of the electrification transition are one of the big drivers. Let's go to the next slide, and we'll start to I'm going to skip over this one for now. Let's just go to the next slide. I want to talk some more now about how the program is going to attempt to help you in making your transition into this field. So the learning goals listed here show what we think we're accomplishing with the curriculum. And I've pictured that T structure to the right to kind of give you the idea that what we're expecting from you as you come into the program is some depth already in some technical fields. Now, that could be social science and economics, but it also very likely is engineering, physics, applied physics, chemistry, other STEM majors. Could be also a data focused or computer science. So that STEM background, is essential for you to be conversant, fluent with the kinds of tools and analyses that are done in this field. And the crossbar on that T is something that we hope you attain through this program, which is that breadth of perspective about the policy landscape and the other disciplines that come together when you're actually deploying these systems. So when you go out to the workforce, renewable energy development program, you're working alongside others, not just other scientists and engineers, but regulators, lawyers, economists, and so on. And so having some of that, seeing some of that in the program is very important. Okay, let's go to the next slide. I think we skipped over one there. Can you just double check? Okay, that's fine. So that slide that I thought was in there is one that talks about that placement after the program, and I'll just say it briefly, but we see people entering this field, they are working on cross-disciplinary teams, and every state in the US has an energy office, state energy office. There are many programs, whether it's red states or blue states, that are implementing these systems, new energy systems. There are many policy levers, policies and programs designed to incentivize or to guide what's happening in the transition. And those teams, as we said, are involving engineers and scientists, but also many others. So that's kind of the purpose of the motivation for structuring the program this way. So looking at, for example, if you start in the fall, what courses would you take for this 1 year on-campus master's program? And we've designed a couple of courses that are custom to this program, specific to the goals and the motivation that I've just been talking about. In the fall, Sustainable Energy Science and Technology, that is taught by Professor Andy Peterson, who's a chemical engineer. And this covers the underlying technologies, all different types of energy generation technologies, and how those systems can be assessed in terms of their potentials, not just technical potentials for providing energy, but their economic potentials. You can see now in the sort of the next grouping of 3 courses, which are a choice for you, one of 3 or more. But these are what the current students have looked at for a required course in the area of policy and economics of the energy transition. So these are taught by Brown faculty. These are regular Brown courses that happen to be, again, very timely topics that others are doing research on and pushing into. So, you would select one of those, or possibly the one in that spring semester, Politics of Climate Change, depending on your interest. The spring semester also has my course, Electrification and Decarbonization. This, again, is a brand new course tailored to this program, which goes into how the grid is changing to accommodate this growth of demand, but also shift to renewable sources, and how this will affect markets, how this will affect climate. So in addition to those required courses, namely, I've just given you 3 things that we expect all students in the program to do. We expect you to choose a focus area. And this is very much up to you. What do you want to come out of this program with as a specialty? And it may be something that you have already studied and you'd like to deepen your expertise, or it may be something new. And that's part of what we ask you in the application, and part of what I'll be helping you with if you come to Brown, to define what courses will go into that focus area. And so that's a chance for you to to sort of develop your profile and your your own personal brand, if you will, as you think about how you want to enter into the workforce that's addressing this problem. So as you might have picked up on one of the prior slides, this focus area could be more towards, if you will, the engineering and technology side. So working on energy system components, materials, processes, or it could be more towards that application and deployment side, dealing with the economics of energy markets, dealing with policy levers and so on. And it could also combine the two. So, again, this is very much open to student interest and student definition. And then there are a couple of free slots, if you will. Anything from the Brown curriculum, potentially. You just have to persuade me as your advisor that it makes sense for you and your goals and your program of study. Okay, let's go to the next slide. I'm going to move a little quickly through these. This is available to you for further study, and of course, happy to answer questions more specifically about what's in these courses. This is Andy Peterson's course about the underlying technology and science of energy generation. Let's go to the next slide. And here's a so-called Sankey diagram of the U.S. Energy system. And on the left here, you're seeing all of the different sources, if you will, different ways that energy is generated here. The size of the flows here, these are these colored bands representing energy flows, are labeled with the amount of energy associated with that flow. And so you can see that overall in the U.S., electricity currently, is made up primarily from natural gas generation. There still is some coal combustion in there, a fairly substantial slice that's nuclear, and the whole renewables sector, solar, wind, hydro, and other renewables, is still quite small, but the growth rate there is very large. And, in the state of California, as I was mentioning, the renewables have penetrated much further. It's something like 38% most recently. Electricity is coming from renewable sources, and that's increasing rapidly. There have been, during this year, 2025 in California, there have been something like 70 days, maybe more now, 70 days where at least sometimes sliced during the day, that the energy mix was entirely renewables on the grid. So, even though this looks like, we've hardly made progress on average across the nation, in fact, there are regions where this transition is truly happening and is going to be very substantial in the next 5 to 10 years. All right, let's go on to the next slide. This is the course that I will be teaching you on electrification and decarbonization. You can see some of the topics I'm planning to cover there. And let me just also mention, in Andy's course, which was the previous one, there will be a component where you as students present to your class on a particular energy generation technology. So, diving into the details of that as part of your study and presenting it to your classmates. In this class, in my class, I will be expecting you, possibly in teams, to work on several projects where you get familiar with the kinds of technology platforms, simulation platforms that are used in the industry to plan these systems, to understand how they're operating, and also to assess risks and their performance under stress. And so that's some of what you're seeing at the bottom on this slide. Let's go to the next one, please. So the Sankey diagram I showed you before was current, that is, or the last couple of years, like where are we today? Here's one take on where we might be in 2050. And, this is very hard to say. Nobody, of course, knows what's 25 years into the future. Yet, at the Energy Information Administration, there's a whole group that studies just that question, and every year puts out a forecast like this. And there's a lot of assumptions behind this, any one of which may be flawed. Yet we all need some view of where this is going. And so these types of forecasts, are very, very critical to industry for people to be able to aim at a target and to understand what others are looking at. So I put this diagram together based on the EIA, the latest energy outlook from EIA. And you can see if this came to pass, that the electricity sector would be nearly 50% renewables by 2050. That's well behind what many people have set as their goals. They'd like to see it much sooner than that. And you can see also that natural gas is still a very large component of the energy system, and oil is still a very large component. So, these are questions, and what you're going to be doing in your careers in this area is affecting all of this. Like which of these sectors will make greater or lesser progress in electrification, and what things are blocking this. Not necessarily technical things, maybe policy as well. Okay, let's go to the next one. These are some just summary views of new courses that we expect to be offering in the future. So if you're planning to come to the program for 2026 in the fall, um, we expect to have new faculty teaching in these areas. The exact details may be different from what you see here, but this is our intention, is to offer a policy and economics track that, like the technology track, is custom and specific to the program. Okay, next one, please. This is just to give you a more of a sense of how what's happening out there in the world affects what you're going to be doing in the classroom. And this relates to some recent occurrences in PJM. That's one of the grid operators. It's one of the large ones, covers the Mid-Atlantic states and parts of the Midwest. As a very, very major disruption in the capacity auction took place over the summer. And if you're reading this slide, you can see that there was a change from this is now the total capacity acquired. We're talking about electrical generation capacity acquired. This is for 3 years out. This is how the grid operators ensure that there's sufficient generation on the grid when the time comes. And you can see that the cost of that immediately prior auction had been 2 billion in some, and it went up to almost 15 billion. So that translates, that's factor of 7, more than 7 increase, translates to very large increases in customers' electricity bills, and that translates to severe political pressure on leadership in those states. So this was a very big deal, a lot of anger and a lot of questions about what's going on there. So one of the answers to those questions was, yeah, there's a huge amount of generating capacity that is waiting to come online. So that kind of giant price increase shouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have happened if we could get those new systems, those new resources through the interconnection queue. That refers to the process that you as a developer or a supplier of generation has to go through to get connected to the grid. So there's a lot in there to learn about, to understand why is that so backlogged, what are the obstacles, and who are the people, such as yourselves, who can solve that problem. Let's go to the next slide. I think we're going to skip over this one, is just to show you that there's a lot of detail and a lot of understanding of the systems needed in order to master this kinds of questions. This slide is I think also we're going to skip because we don't have a lot of time here, but that's just relating to the evolution of battery storage systems. I mentioned that before, that's one of the big stories today, that those are getting deployed. Long duration energy storage is going to be one of the stories in the next few years, and that's something that you might choose to specialize in. When you talk to us about your focus area, the idea is that you'll take your existing interests and skills, kind of blend into that, what is your goal for the future, including immediate future on leaving the program, as well as, maybe a few years after that, where you hope to be contributing in this industry. And then we'll talk about what courses from the Brown catalog, could be part of your focus area. These are some examples of courses you might be choosing if you're more on the energy processes, conversion processes, components, and systems. On the next slide, I think we have some similar examples. If you're more on the economics, environment, and policy side, again, choosing from across the Brown curriculum, there's quite a range of fantastic faculty and existing courses to support this. So just to summarize, you're taking 3 required courses that are custom and specific to our program. You're taking 3 more courses that we help you come up with. We help you select based on your focus area, and then you still have a couple of sort of free choice electives. To the next slide, please. This is just to remind me to tell you that if you cannot find something that you think is interesting and critical for you at in the Brown catalog, we also have an agreement with Harvard University at Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. Any courses that they offer, you would be able to register for, and vice versa. Harvard students can come to Brown for things. So I just looked up what they're offering this fall. That's specifically to related to the sustainable energy area, and you can see that there are a number of things, some of which is rather similar to what we're teaching, but other things that might be specifically of interest to you. So that's just one more avenue to consider if you come to Brown, that you have access to quite a range of choice. Okay, let's go to the next one. And this is where I'm going to wrap up. I know some of you may be interested in research careers and thinking of a master's degree as a step towards that, which is great. My one sort of caution or caveat with this program, it is rather brief. It is simply 2 semesters, 8 courses on campus. You come to Brown, and it's only 1 academic year. We do, however, have a tremendous faculty. We have people all across those disciplines listed on the left. The core group that's doing research work in sustainable energy topics is about 25. There are many more, up to maybe about 60 to 70 faculty who are affiliated with this initiative in sustainable energy. So there is truly a wide range of faculty that you might ally with if you are interested in doing research. I would just add, if that's your goal, please make sure to start talking to people early and make sure that you have some background to be able to start that work when you come to campus. It's very difficult to begin to do something meaningful, halfway through, since it is such a compressed timeline. But that will be an interesting aspect for you to pursue if that's your interest. And people do consider coming to this program and then applying to PhD programs. But I think, as you've heard from my descriptions, our concept here is mostly towards preparing you to join applications and deployment teams, to take your knowledge into the workforce, into this grand transition that's underway. So either way, I'm happy to talk to you more about what your goals are and how this program could help you get there. Thanks. All right, let's go to the next one. And here I'm turning it back over to Victoria to close out with some of the university level supports for you as master's students.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rod. So we have a lot of support for master's students at Brown. One of the things that makes us unique in the landscape of master's programs in the United States is that we have dedicated career and student affairs folks who are here to help you while you're on campus. We recognize that master students are only with us for a year or 2 before they graduate, so you really need to hit the ground running with career development, networking, things come up quickly, right? Student affairs. So we're really here to help you. So we have these layers of support. Of course, starting with your program, you have folks from the industry, professors of the practice, people who are really there to help you get an understanding of what the job search is like in industry, best practices, companies to look at, things like that. We also have the Center for Career Development putting on recruitment fairs, hosting companies looking to hire Brown students. But then we also have the Center for Master Student Excellence, and the Center for Master Student Excellence houses all of the master's specific resources for our students at Brown. We have career and professional development staff. Specifically, we have folks who are there for STEM to talk to you about career pathways, to talk to you about networking, starting a job search, doing mock interviews, things like that, that are really going to help you get a foot in the door and really hit the ground running for your next step in your career, whether that be going into industry, like Rod was saying, or going on to get a PhD. So lots of help and assistance in that way. One of the great perks of going to Brown University is also that you're an alumni for life, right? So we have a really robust and active alumni base who are there to network and help our students as well after graduation. So we can go to the next slide. If you want to get a sense of sort of what we're doing for career development for master's students in the Center for Master Student Excellence, I would definitely encourage you to check out our website. You can get sort of a snapshot of the types of events and programming that we're putting on. The career staff in the Center for Master Student Excellence work hand in hand with the School of Engineering and with folks across Brown's campus to really connect you with the resources that we have here. So I would definitely encourage you to take a look at that website to see sort of what you might have access to once you get here. We can go to the next slide. We've outlined also some sustainable energy career paths for you to think through. This is really sort of going through the ethos of the program, the coursework, things like that. We identified some areas and some job titles that our students will gain success in after graduation. So a good jumping off point too, if you're looking to talk to our career and professional development team once you get to campus. Really, the sustainable energy program is a good springboard for a lot of different types of careers in the sustainable energy field. So we can go to the next slide. Within the School of Engineering, we also have a great group of folks who are there to help you along the way. So our student affairs team in the School of Engineering really helping our students in the classroom and outside of the classroom connect across Brown. So we've got Tina, who works really closely with our current students. We've got, of course, Rod, who've already heard from in this presentation, helping with students with academic matters. Tori is great. She's a program coordinator, helping students find and connect them with people across campus, as well as making sure that we're sort of following policies and practices with registering for courses and things like that. So really, folks are here to help you with whatever you might need. That's a great thing about Brown. Like I was talking about those layers of support, your department, the Center for Master Student Excellence, lots of folks who are there to, in times of need, really serve you while you're here. So you won't feel like you're alone in your department or anything like that. We've got folks who are there to also help you network outside of the program. So putting on events, we've got yoga on the green that we do on a monthly basis. There are networking events that we put on with other divisions for on campus. The UFly Center is a good example. The Sarah Doyle Center for Women is a good example. So really trying to connect you with folks who have like-minded interests as well. So we can go to the next slide. So now we're here to answer some questions. We already have some that I've saved in the Q&A. I answered a few. So we'll go ahead and start with the Q&A so y'all can start to put those questions in there. But first, Rod, there's a couple of questions about course requirements and what academic background folks should have at the undergraduate level to be successful in their candidacy to our sustainable energy program.
Good. Okay, thanks for the questions. Right, so you could be coming from any of a number of different majors. That is not a specific requirement as regards to what your field of study was. However, the however is you should have some university level science training. If you have done physics, chemistry, earth sciences, environmental sciences, if you've done some math course, maybe some data science courses, that's what we're going to be looking for. So you need to have some ability, some prerequisites. Otherwise, you're just not going to be able to deal with the level of analytical detail that's required in the courses that we're putting forward. So it would be possible and legitimate to have a policy interest or economics interest and pursue that. but you are going to need to get through that sustainable energy course, the electrification course, and those do have some engineering content. So I hope that's clear. We're going to be looking to see that you have done some STEM coursework. It doesn't mean you had a STEM major necessarily. Hope that helps.
Yeah, that helps a lot because there was a student specifically asking about whether or not their economics background would be to their detriment in the application process. And it
Yeah.
sounds like as long as they have that background, it won't be.
That's right. And in fact, I think many of our applicants are coming from a STEM degree background, but we specifically want to have that cross-disciplinary component. So we are looking for applicants who come from the social sciences and have the interest to add some technical depth. And I think that's a great reason to consider such a program, that if you're going to go into the workforce in this area, you will be working with a lot of STEM trained people, engineers and scientists. So having some more of that, I think, will be helpful to you.
So then another question about how competitive is the program for admission due to class size? And I know we're very new and small, so I wasn't sure if you wanted to handle how competitive the program is for admission.
Yeah, yeah, no, thanks for asking that. So, this is Brown University, an Ivy League school. The bar is pretty high, but because it's a new program, we are still small. This year in particular was kind of a soft start. Fall next year admissions, it's likely to be a larger class size. But this is not like undergrad admissions at Brown, where I mean, if there's tens of thousands of applicants, probably half of them are qualified, and we can admit, 10% or some very small fraction. I believe in this program so far, if you are a qualified applicant, we're going to be able to offer you a spot. And so I think that's really the message. Yes, we're competitive, but it's not the case that you're going to be squeezed out, or we can't consider you because of size, at least so far. So I hope that helps. I mean, I think if you clear the bar, we're going to be able to welcome you to Brown. Yeah.
I think, yeah, that's just such a big difference between folks' experiences applying to undergraduate programs versus
Yeah.
graduate programs, right? Looking, folks have done the work at the undergraduate level. So if you've proven that, then yeah, it's not the same 6% admit rate that you see at the
Right.
college level.
That's right. Thank you.
So is there work or field experience required to be admitted to this program?
No, no, there is no requirement. And in fact, the way we think about it, the way we've constructed this program, you might have worked some, maybe if you have up to maybe 1 to 3 years of work experience, that could be appropriate and valuable. If you've done much more than that, you're probably already beyond, the levels that we're trying to bring you up to. So I think, you should view this type of program as kind of convertible to something like 3 or 4 years of work experience. And I think you'll see that in many of the job postings, that, you could get that job with a bachelor's degree only. You could get that job with a master's degree. You could get that job with a PhD, but the amount of experience that will be expected from you, is much more. If you're just a bachelor's level candidate, maybe it's 7 to 10 years of experience. Master's level candidate, you could be reducing that. PhD even more. And so depending on that job, this program could very likely get you to a point where the experience you've already had is enough, to get in the door to that position. So no, work experience not required. We're happy to see some of it. But I think, again, if you're looking for a credential and you're already in the middle of your career, um, this is maybe not the program for you. This is much more about early career students. Hope that's clear. Hope that's helpful.
Super helpful. Thank you, Rod. And then, of course, another question about funding. What does the landscape for funding look like? And then also graduate assistant and teaching assistant opportunities in the department. And I'll start by
Yeah.
saying the vast majority of our students in the School of Engineering master's programs are self-funded. But if you want to talk a little bit about specifically sustainable energy, that would be great.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And in fact, I think you'll see that certainly across other Ivy League peers and other schools, masters master's degrees are largely self-funded, not entirely. So the exceptions are, I mean, some programs that are better established, longer established, may have scholarship funds available. We do not yet. That could change in the future, but for now, that is not the case. Yes, we do sometimes hire master's students as TAs or RAs. There is nothing that is, specifically allocated or slated to this program, particularly RAs. As I was saying, there are many faculty who are doing great research. It's going to be incumbent on you to make contact with those groups. If you have skills and talent and interests that's of interest to them, it's possible that you could get an RA position, but that's fair. I think as I was saying before, it's a little challenging because you're here on campus for a very short amount of time. You would need to be really primed to do that coming in the door. That is possible. And also, on occasions, master's students are hired to TA, of course, if you have background that's, specifically relevant. It's possible you'd be able to get a TA position, but those funds would not cover tuition. Those funds would be stipend to you. Would help you with your living expenses. And I will say some of our students now in the program have found internships that they're doing while students in the program. Those are not Brown positions, but those are in the Providence and Rhode Island area. So there are possibilities locally, but it's not something that you should count on from us. So I know it's a big concern. It's important, but part of why we designed this as a relatively short, 1 year, one academic year program, is we really want to get you through and get you into gainful employment if that's your goal. So that's part of our outlook in designing the program this way.
Fantastic. Well, that's it for questions in the Q&A. So I think we can leave it there. Thank you, everybody, so much for joining. And then thank you, of course, Rod, for sharing so much great information about the program.
It's my pleasure. And let me just reiterate, if you have further questions or would like more insight into the details of the program, very happy to hear from you by an email. If you'd like to set up a Zoom chat or something else, very happy to. So thank you for listening. Thanks for your interest. And I look forward to talking to you again. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone.